Hello, and welcome to Infidelity Tales Lab. Your support means everything to us. We'd love to know, which geographical location are you joining from today? At home? On the go? Share with us below. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Power. Douglas Harrington surveyed the Seattle skyline from his corner office at Harrington Innovations, the tech manufacturing empire he had built from nothing over 30 years. The rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers, matching the rhythm of his thoughts as he considered his legacy. "Mr. Harrington, your sons are here for the quarterly review," his assistant, Vivian, announced through the intercom. Douglas straightened his tie, a habit from his early days when he had to impress investors with nothing but determination and dreams. Now, at 62, his company dominated the precision medical equipment industry, with contracts spanning 3 continents and annual revenues exceeding $600 million. The boardroom felt different today. Douglas noticed the subtle glances between his sons, Nolan and Preston, seated together on the opposite side rather than flanking him, as usual. His wife Marianne sat beside them, her smile tight and performative. Something had shifted in his absence during his recent business trip to Tokyo. "Let's begin," Douglas said, nodding to the CFO. As the presentation progressed, Douglas observed the micro-expressions flickering across his family members' faces: Nolan's impatience, Preston's calculated gaze, Marianne's detachment. After building an empire by reading people, these signals were as clear as financial reports. Later that evening, Douglas returned to his Lake Washington mansion to find Marianne on a call in the garden, speaking in hushed tones. She jumped when she noticed him, quickly ending the conversation. "Business at this hour?" Douglas asked, pouring himself a scotch. "Just charity planning," Marianne replied, slipping her phone into her pocket. "How was your day?" "Illuminating," he answered, not mentioning the secured flash drive in his pocket containing copies of emails his private investigator had recovered. Emails between his wife and Richard Blackstone, his son's mentor and the company's head of product development. Douglas had first noticed the changes 3 months ago. Board members suddenly unavailable for their usual golf games. Department heads redirecting questions back to his sons. Marianne's sudden interest in charity events that coincided with Blackstone's attendance. That night, as Marianne slept, Douglas sat in his home office reviewing decades of business decisions, relationships, and contingency plans. By dawn, he had formulated a strategy that would make his upcoming chess moves undetectable until it was too late for his opponents. He made one call to an old friend, Samuel Westbrook, before sunrise. "Sam, remember that favor from Anchorage in '93? I need to cash in." Chapter 2. Shadows of Betrayal. Nolan Harrington, the elder son at 35, had his father's commanding presence but none of his patience. He paced the length of Blackstone's downtown condo, the Seattle skyline twinkling behind him like a backdrop of stars. "We need to accelerate the timeline," Nolan insisted. "Dad's getting suspicious. I saw him reviewing the Morrison account yesterday, the one you restructured." Richard Blackstone, 50, with salt and pepper hair and a rugby player's build, swirled his whiskey thoughtfully. "Rushing creates mistakes. The board vote is in 2 weeks. We have the numbers. Unless he sways them back." Preston countered, younger than Nolan by 3 years, but with twice the strategic mind. "Dad built this company on relationships, not just contracts." The door opened, and Marianne Harrington entered, removing her designer coat. At 57, she maintained the elegance that had first captured Douglas's attention during a business conference in Chicago decades ago. "Douglas called Anton Petrosky today," she announced without preamble, naming a board member they thought was firmly in their camp. "Damn it." Nolan slammed his fist on the marble countertop. "Did you hear what they discussed?" "No, but he's been making calls to all the major clients this week. Says it's routine relationship management." "Nothing routine about it," Preston muttered. "He's securing his position." Blackstone put his arm around Marianne, his eyes cold with calculation. "We have the presentation ready for the board. The company needs to evolve, and Douglas is resistant to necessary changes. The stagnant growth in the Asian markets is our strongest argument. which ignores the fact that he just secured the Malaysian partnership. Preston noted. Dad's not as out of touch as we're painting him. It doesn't matter, Nolan cut in. We have the votes. In 2 weeks, Harrington Innovations begins a new chapter, without its founder at the helm. What none of them knew was that Douglas had installed state-of-the-art surveillance in Blackstone's condo months ago, when his initial suspicions arose. As they plotted, Douglas watched the live feed from his secure laptop, noting every detail, every name, every betrayal. The next day, Douglas invited Leonard Morrison, CEO of Morrison Healthcare, their largest client at $100 million annually, to his private lake house. The meeting lasted 5 hours. Hell of a thing they're planning, Morrison said, reviewing the evidence Douglas presented. You've been good to me, Doug. When my company was on the brink after the lawsuit, you stood by me. Restructured our contract when no one would touch us. Loyalty matters in this business, Len, Douglas replied. More than quarterly projections. What are you going to do? Douglas smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. Watch them take the throne. For now. Meanwhile, Marion accessed Douglas's calendar from their shared home computer and forwarded his schedule to Blackstone, unaware that each action was being logged and tracked by software Douglas had installed weeks ago. Chapter 3. The Approaching Storm. The annual Harrington Innovations Charity Gala transformed the Seattle Art Museum into a wonderland of crystal and silver. As founder and CEO, Douglas circulated among politicians, clients, and industry leaders, his handshake firm, his smile practiced. From across the room, he watched Marianne laughing with Richard Blackstone, her hand lingering on his arm a moment too long. His sons worked the room separately, Preston with the board members, Nolan with the international clients. Douglas approached Howard Yamamoto, their head of Asian operations, who had flown in specially for the event. Howard, walk with me. Douglas guided him to a private exhibition room displaying ancient Japanese artifacts. Tell me, how long have you known about my son's plan to restructure the Asian division? Yamamoto's expression betrayed nothing, but the slight stiffening of his shoulders confirmed Douglas's suspicions. Mr. Harrington, don't bother denying it. I'm not angry with you. You're protecting your position. Douglas studied a samurai sword in its display case. The blade that hesitates invites defeat. I've always admired that philosophy. They approached me 6 weeks ago, Yamamoto admitted. The plan would dissolve my division and redistribute operations through regional contractors. 30 of my people would lose their jobs. Douglas nodded. And my position on such restructuring has always been clear. You believe our strength is in our people, not just our contracts. Precisely. Douglas turned to face him directly. I've made arrangements to protect your team, regardless of what happens next week. Your loyalty to them speaks well of you. As the evening proceeded, Douglas executed the next phase of his plan. He individually met with 5 key international clients, sharing drinks and reminiscing about their long partnerships. With each, he planted seeds of concern about the company's future direction, careful never to directly criticize his sons. Later, as the event wound down, Douglas overheard a conversation between Preston and Anton Petrosky in the courtyard. Your father's made an impressive showing tonight, Petrosky commented. Hard to imagine Harrington Innovations without him at the helm. Change is necessary for growth, Preston replied smoothly. The board presentation will make that clear. We appreciate your support, Anton. You have it for now, but I've known your father for 20 years. He won't go quietly into retirement. He won't have a choice once the vote is tallied. Douglas slipped away unnoticed, making a brief call to Samuel Westbrook. Sam, initiate phase 1 tomorrow morning, and reach out to Len Morrison. Tell him to prepare the contingency contract we discussed. The following morning, Douglas arrived at the office earlier than usual. He spent 2 hours in his private vault, removing certain documents and adding others. By the time his family and the executive team arrived for the pre-board meeting strategy session, he had composed himself into a picture of unsuspecting calm. Nolan led the meeting with uncharacteristic professionalism, outlining their quarterly projections and new market strategies. Preston handled questions about product development, carefully avoiding any mention of the upcoming board vote that would force their father's retirement. Douglas participated minimally, letting them believe he suspected nothing. As the meeting concluded, he asked only one question. The Morrison contract renewal is next month. Who's handling the negotiations? A moment of awkward silence followed. I've got it covered, Dad, Nolan finally answered. We're meeting with their team next week. Douglas nodded thoughtfully. Good. They're crucial to our bottom line. 100 million reasons to keep them happy. As everyone filed out, Douglas called his sons back. Just wanted to say I'm proud of how you handled the meeting today. Very professional. The lie tasted bitter, but he maintained his fatherly smile. Thanks, Dad, Preston responded, genuine surprise in his voice. We learn from the best, Nolan added with practiced sincerity. Douglas watched them leave, these strangers wearing his name, carrying his blood, plotting his professional execution. The storm was approaching, and he alone knew its true magnitude. Chapter 4. The Coup. The boardroom of Harrington Innovations fell silent as the last vote was counted. Douglas sat motionless at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as the company secretary cleared his throat. With 9 votes in favor and 4 against, the board has approved the leadership transition plan as presented. Douglas Harrington will assume the role of Chairman Emeritus, with Nolan Harrington appointed as Chief Executive Officer and Preston Harrington as Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. Preston couldn't quite meet his father's eyes, but Nolan showed no such reservation, his smile triumphant as scattered applause broke out among their supporters. I'd like to say a few words, Douglas spoke, his voice steady despite the professional assassination he'd just witnessed. He stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. 30 years ago, I built this company with nothing but determination and a vision for how medical technology could change lives. I've watched it grow from a workshop in my garage to an international leader. He paused, scanning the faces around him, board members who had known him for decades, now avoiding his gaze. To my sons, I offer congratulations. Leadership is a privilege and a burden. May you carry both with wisdom. He gathered his papers methodically. As my final act as CEO, I've prepared transition folders for each of you, outlining ongoing projects and client relationships that require immediate attention. Douglas distributed leather portfolios to each board member, his sons, and key executives. I'll clear my office by the end of the day. As the meeting adjourned, Richard Blackstone approached Douglas with an outstretched hand. Douglas, I hope there are no hard feelings. The company needed this change. Douglas regarded Blackstone's hand, but didn't take it. Richard, I've always appreciated your directness. It's why I hired you 15 years ago when no one else would touch you after the Mentech scandal. He leaned closer. Remember that what can be built can also be dismantled. Later that afternoon, as Douglas packed his personal items under the watchful eye of security, his son's first executive decision, Mary Ann appeared in his doorway. They told me at reception, she said. I came as soon as I heard. Did you? Douglas continued packing, not looking up. Interesting, since you knew about this weeks ago. Your call to Blackstone last night confirmed the votes were secured. Color drained from Mary Ann's face. Douglas, save it. He finally met her gaze. 36 years of marriage, and you couldn't even do me the courtesy of admitting you wanted me gone. He handed her a small box from his desk. Your anniversary gift. I was going to give it to you next week, but circumstances have changed. Inside was a diamond bracelet she had admired months ago. Douglas walked past her without another word, carrying a single box of belongings. Security escorted him to the lobby where his sons waited by the entrance. This company is ours now, old man, Nolan declared, loud enough for the gathered employees to hear. The board agreed it's time for new blood. Your time is over, Marian added with a laugh, having composed herself and joined them, standing closer to Blackstone than to her sons. Douglas looked at them, his family transformed into strangers, and nodded once. We'll see. That evening, as the 4 conspirators celebrated at Blackstone's condo with champagne, Douglas sat alone in his home office, making a single phone call. Leonard, it's Douglas. They did exactly as we anticipated. Are you ready to proceed? The paperwork is already being filed, Leonard Morrison confirmed. My board approved the contract transfer this morning. Effective immediately, Morrison Healthcare's business relationship is with Harrington Medical Solutions, not Harrington Innovations. Douglas smiled for the first time that day. And the Malaysian Consortium? They're following our lead. The $60 million expansion project will go through your new company. Perfect. Let the game begin. Chapter 5. Foundation of Ruin. Preston Harrington stared at the financial reports in disbelief, running his hand through his hair for the fifth time in as many minutes. It had been 6 days since they had forced his father into retirement, and things were already unraveling at alarming speed. This can't be right, he muttered, turning to the nervous CFO. Morrison Healthcare can't just terminate a $100 million contract without cause or notice. They did, the CFO confirmed. The contract had a leadership change clause that allowed for immediate termination. It was buried in subsection 12.4 that your father personally negotiated with Leonard Morrison last year. And Malaysian deal. Pulled out yesterday. Same clause, different contract. Nolan burst into the conference room, his face flushed with rage. The Yoshida Group just canceled. That's 3 major clients in a week. Preston turned to his brother. We're hemorrhaging contracts. $160 million in recurring revenue gone. Get Dad on the phone. Nolan ordered an assistant. I've tried, the young woman replied nervously. He's not accepting calls from the company line. Then try his personal number. It's been disconnected. Marianne entered with Richard Blackstone, both looking increasingly concerned. The Westbrook Foundation just pulled their research funding, she announced. Samuel Westbrook specifically cited Douglas's departure as the reason. Westbrook, Nolan scoffed. That foundation contributes what, $5 million? We can manage without it. The foundation itself, yes, Preston said quietly, reviewing another document that had just been delivered. But apparently, Westbrook personally guaranteed the loans for our expansion into the Canadian market. Without that guarantee, the bank is calling the notes due. All of them. That's $40 million. Nolan slammed his fist on the table. They can't do that. They can and they are, the CFO confirmed. The guarantee was contingent on Douglas Harrington's active leadership role. Blackstone loosened his tie, his earlier confidence evaporating. We need to call an emergency board meeting. This is a coordinated attack. By my father, Preston said, a note of grudging admiration in his voice. He anticipated everything. These clauses, these relationships, he's been planning this for months. Later that day, as the board members assembled in panic, Preston pulled up an article on his tablet. You need to see this, he told his brother, passing him the device. The headline read, Medical technology pioneer Douglas Harrington launches new venture, Harrington Medical Solutions. He started a competing company? Nolan hissed. That's a breach of his non-compete. Preston shook his head. There is no non-compete. I checked his employment contract this morning. It was amended last year to remove that clause. The board approved it unanimously, including us. We thought it was a routine update. The board meeting quickly devolved into accusations and blame. Anton Petrosky, who had voted for the leadership change, now voiced what many were thinking. We've been outmaneuvered. Douglas built this company on relationships, not just contracts and products. Those relationships are walking out the door with him. By the end of the week, Harrington Innovation stock had plummeted 42%. Emergency measures were implemented. Layoffs announced, projects canceled, expenses slashed. The Malaysian expansion that was supposed to be Preston's legacy project was indefinitely shelved. Marianne found herself increasingly isolated, not just from her former social circle, where Douglas's influence ran deep, but even within the company. Executives who had smiled at her a week ago now avoided eye contact. Her calls to family friends went unreturned. We need to talk to him, she finally admitted to her sons during a crisis meeting at the empty Harrington mansion. Douglas had moved out the day after the board vote, leaving no forwarding address. We need to negotiate. Negotiate what? Nolan snapped. A surrender? He's destroying everything. He's destroying what we took from him. Preston corrected, a new understanding in his eyes. And he's doing it by the book. Every lost contract, every withdrawn guarantee, it's all legally sound. He created fail-safes we never saw. What about Blackstone? Nolan turned to his mother. Can't he help? He's been advising us for months on this transition. Mary Ann's expression darkened. Richard isn't returning my calls either. Apparently, his position at Miller Pharmaceuticals has been reinstated. He's leaving for Boston tomorrow. Miller Pharmaceuticals? Preston echoed. Our direct competitor? The one Dad always refused to partner with. The same, Mary Ann confirmed, realization dawning on her face. Your father must have made some calls. Outside the mansion, Douglas sat in his car, listening to the conversation through the security system he still controlled. He started the engine as a text message arrived from Leonard Morrison. Phase 2 complete. Board members Petrosky, Williams, and Chun have requested private meetings with you. They're jumping ship. Douglas smiled grimly as he drove away. The foundation of his children's betrayal was crumbling faster than even he had anticipated. Chapter 6. The Abyss Stares Back. 10 days after the coup, Harrington Innovations resembled a sinking ship. Employees cleared out their desks as rumors of bankruptcy spread. The stock had been temporarily suspended from trading after falling 68% in a week. Nolan Harrington barricaded himself in the CEO office, his father's former sanctuary, surrounded by empty liquor bottles and emergency financial reports. The phone rang constantly with calls from panicked investors and angry board members. Preston, meanwhile, worked methodically to salvage what he could, meeting with remaining clients and trying to stem the exodus of top talent. He returned from one such failed meeting to find his brother in a destructive rage. The Singapore office is gone, Nolan slurred, throwing a crystal paperweight against the wall. The entire development team resigned this morning. All 28 of them. They're joining Dad's new company, Preston confirmed, straightening a fallen picture frame, a photograph of their father accepting an Industry Innovation Award, along with most of our research division and the top sales directors. How? How did he orchestrate this so perfectly? Nolan demanded. We had the votes. We had control. We had the titles. Preston corrected. Dad had the relationships. The Morrison contract alone was 20% of our annual revenue. We need to sue him, Nolan decided, reaching for the phone. Corporate sabotage, tortious interference. Preston disconnected the call. With what money? Our legal fund is depleted after the last round of emergency measures. Besides, everything he's done is technically legal. He created exit clauses in every major contract and personally cultivated relationships with decision-makers for decades. The brothers' argument was interrupted by their assistant, announcing an unexpected visitor. Leonard Morrison, CEO of their former largest client, stood in the doorway, his expression grave. Gentlemen, I thought we should have this conversation in person. Come to gloat, Len. Nolan spat. Or did my father send you to deliver another blow? Morrison took a seat uninvited. Your father didn't send me. In fact, he advised against this meeting. But I've known you boys since you were teenagers, and I felt I owed you the courtesy of an explanation. We know the explanation, Preston said quietly. We betrayed him, and he destroyed us in return. It's more than that, Morrison replied. Douglas and I have been friends for 30 years. When my wife was diagnosed with cancer in '07, your father arranged specialists, covered treatments insurance wouldn't touch. When a lawsuit nearly bankrupted my company in 2015, he stood by me, restructured our contract to keep us afloat. He leaned forward, eyes moving between the brothers. Business is relationships. Your father understood that. You saw his client meetings as wasted time that could be spent on expansion. You saw his loyalty to long-term employees as sentimentality that hurt the bottom line. So this is punishment, Nolan concluded bitterly. This is consequence, Morrison corrected. Douglas didn't poach our contract. I terminated our relationship with Harrington Innovations the moment you forced him out. I sought him out to offer our business to his new venture. After Morrison left, Preston found his mother in the company apartment, packing her belongings. Her once impeccable appearance had given way to disheveled anxiety. Richard's gone to Boston, she said without preamble. He's blocked my calls. Blackstone was never on our side, Preston realized aloud. Dad must have approached Miller Pharmaceuticals weeks ago, arranged a position for him. Your father always said Richard was ambitious to a fault, Marianne admitted, sinking into a chair. I just never thought that he'd abandon you when things got difficult. Preston finished for her. The way we abandoned Dad. That evening, as the executive team prepared for an emergency board meeting to discuss bankruptcy options, Preston's phone rang with an unlisted number. Hello. It's time we talked, Douglas Harrington said, his voice steady and controlled. Bring your brother and mother to the lake house tomorrow at noon. Come alone or don't come at all. The next morning, the three of them drove to the secluded property in silence. They found Douglas on the dock, staring out at the water. He had lost weight, but his posture remained unbending, his presence commanding even in casual clothes. As they approached, he turned to face them, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. You wanted to talk? Nolan began defensively. So talk. Douglas studied him for a moment before replying. Harrington Innovations will file for bankruptcy protection by the end of the week. The board has already approved the measure as of last night's meeting. You've destroyed a 30-year legacy, Marianne accused, her voice breaking. Your life's work. No, Douglas corrected calmly. You three destroyed it. I merely ensured you couldn't profit from your betrayal. What do you want from us? Preston asked, the only one willing to acknowledge their desperate position. Douglas gestured toward the house where they could see several cars parked. Inside are the board members who have resigned from Harrington Innovations. They've agreed to back my new venture, along with Leonard Morrison and 6 other major clients. He handed Preston a folder. This is my offer, the only one you'll receive. Inside were 3 identical documents, severance agreements that would release them from any financial obligation for the company's collapse in exchange for their remaining shares, which were nearly worthless anyway. You're cutting us out completely, Nolan realized, rage building in his voice. Just as you did to me, Douglas confirmed without emotion. The difference is, I'm offering you a clean break rather than the public humiliation you deserve. And if we refuse? Marianne challenged. Douglas's smile was cold. Then I'll proceed with the evidence I've gathered of your conspiracy with Blackstone, including recorded conversations in his condo planning my removal. Industrial espionage carries significant penalties. Nolan lunged forward, but Preston held him back. You were recording us? That's illegal. Actually, Washington is a one-party consent state for recordings, Douglas corrected. But feel free to challenge it in court. The publicity would certainly be interesting. Preston, always the more pragmatic brother, studied his father with new understanding. You knew all along, didn't you? You let us think we were winning. I gave you every opportunity to reconsider your course, Douglas replied. Instead, you declared, and I quote, "This company is ours now, old man." Rather definitive, wouldn't you say? Marion stepped forward, tears threatening. Douglas, please. 36 years of marriage has to count for something. His eyes, when they met hers, contained no warmth, no recognition of shared history. It counted for nothing when you laughed and said my time was over. Remember? He turned away from them, gazing back at the lake. You have until tomorrow to sign the agreements. After that, my generosity expires. As they walked back to their car in defeat, Preston glanced back at his father's solitary figure on the dock. You never trusted us, he said quietly. Not really. Would you have trusted us? Marion asked, the weight of her choices finally settling on her shoulders. In his position, Nolan said nothing. His rage collapsed into numb acceptance as they drove away from the lake house, away from the empire they had briefly claimed and definitively destroyed. Chapter 7. Ashes and Embers. The bankruptcy of Harrington Innovations dominated business headlines for weeks. Medical tech giant collapses after founder's ouster ran alongside analyses of the company's spectacular implosion. Industry experts puzzled over how a stable, profitable enterprise could disintegrate so rapidly. Meanwhile, Douglas Harrington's new venture, Harrington Medical Solutions, announced its formal launch with Leonard Morrison's healthcare conglomerate as its flagship client. The press release mentioned the strategic partnership built on decades of mutual respect and shared vision, a pointed contrast to his previous company's demise. Preston Harrington read these developments from a rented apartment in downtown Seattle, having been forced to sell his lakeside condo to cover mounting debts. The severance agreement he'd signed protected him from the company's collapse, but did nothing to shield him from the professional fallout. 6 job applications, 6 rejections, all citing organizational fit concerns as the reason. His phone rang. Nolan, calling for the 3rd time that day. "Have you seen it?" Nolan demanded without preamble. "Seen what?" "Dad's interview in the Financial Times. He announced the Malaysian expansion for his new company. Using our exact plans, Preston. The ones you developed." Preston sighed, rubbing his temples. "They were company plans, Nolan. Developed using company resources. We don't own them anymore. He's systematically erasing us." Nolan continued, his voice tight with restrained fury. "I can't even get calls returned from people who used to beg for 5 minutes of my time." "What did you expect?" Preston asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. "We staged a coup against one of the most connected men in the industry. Did you think people would line up to hire us afterward?" The silence on the other end suggested Nolan hadn't considered this outcome. Preston continued, "Has Mom called you?" "Not since last week. She's trying to sell the house, but Dad's lawyers put a lien on it. Something about community property disputes pending the divorce." After hanging up, Preston found himself staring at the business card Douglas had handed him as they left the lake house. It contained only a phone number, nothing else. He'd kept it against his better judgment, a lifeline he wasn't yet desperate enough to use. His doorbell rang, interrupting his contemplation. A courier delivered a small package. Inside, a newspaper clipping about Harrington Medical Solutions winning the Malaysian contract, paperclipped to a note in his father's distinctive handwriting. "The foundation matters." Preston studied the cryptic message, remembering his father's insistence on building proper foundations for any endeavor. It had been a constant theme in childhood lessons. Whether building a model airplane or planning a business strategy, Douglas Harrington emphasized starting right. The company Preston and Nolan had briefly controlled had been built on a foundation Douglas laid over decades. Their coup had ignored that foundation, treating the company as merely assets and revenue rather than relationships and trust. Across town, Marion Harrington sat in her attorney's office, reviewing divorce papers that stripped away any claim to Douglas's new business ventures or personal assets acquired since their separation. "He's being unnecessarily punitive," her lawyer observed. "The prenuptial agreement is 36 years old. We could challenge it." "No," Marianne said quietly. "We won't. Mrs. Harrington, with all due respect, your husband is worth considerably more now than when this agreement was signed. You're entitled to—" "Nothing," she interrupted. "I'm entitled to nothing. The agreement stands." Later, as she packed the few personal belongings Douglas's lawyers had permitted her to remove from their home, Marianne found a small wooden box in her vanity drawer. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 6 months earlier. "Marianne, if you're reading this, then what I've suspected has come to pass. 36 years deserved better than betrayal. I've always known when you're lying." Your left eyebrow twitches just slightly. "It twitched when I asked about your late-night calls to Richard. I built my first company for us. This last one is for me. Douglas." She closed the box, understanding now the moment when everything changed. Not the board vote, not the public humiliation, but months earlier when he had first recognized her deception and begun planning his response. Meanwhile, Douglas met with Leonard Morrison and Samuel Westbrook at his new company headquarters, a modern glass building overlooking Elliott Bay, purposely visible from his son's former offices. "The Malaysian contract is just the beginning," Douglas explained, reviewing projection charts. "With their partnership, we'll expand into the Southeast Asian market by 3rd quarter. "And your family situation?" Westbrook asked carefully. The 3 men had been friends for decades, their children growing up together at company picnics and holiday gatherings. Douglas's expression remained impassive. "That matter is concluded, Doug." Morrison leaned forward, concern evident in his voice. "I've supported every step of this. They earned what happened, but they're still your family." "No," Douglas replied, his tone final. "Family doesn't conspire against you. Family doesn't betray trust built over decades." The people who did those things merely share my DNA. As his friends exchanged worried glances, Douglas continued reviewing the expansion plans, his focus entirely on the future he was building from the ashes of betrayal. Chapter 8: Desperate Measures. 3 months after Harrington Innovations declared bankruptcy, Nolan Harrington sat in a dimly lit bar on the outskirts of Seattle, nursing his fourth whiskey. His designer watch and custom suit, remnants of his brief tenure as CEO, contrasted sharply with his haggard appearance and the establishment's worn interior. "Another," he signaled to the bartender, sliding his premium credit card across the counter. The bartender returned moments later, embarrassment evident in his expression. "I'm sorry, sir. Your card was declined." Nolan stared in disbelief, then fumbled for his phone to check his account balance. Zero. Impossible. He transferred funds just yesterday to cover his expenses. As he scrolled through his transaction history, a new entry appeared. Account freeze. Legal proceedings. Before he could process this information, his phone lit up with a call from Preston. "Did you authorize a leak to TechWire about Dad's military contract?" Preston demanded without preamble. "What? No. What are you talking about?" Someone gave detailed information about Harrington Medical Solutions' pending Department of Defense contract to the press. "They're claiming security vulnerabilities in the proposal." "Wasn't me," Nolan insisted, though the idea sparked interest through his alcohol-dulled mind. "Why would you think it was?" "Because Dad's lawyers just filed a cease and desist against you specifically. They've frozen your accounts, pending an investigation into corporate espionage." "That's absurd. I don't have access to any of his company's information." "They're claiming you used your remaining industry contacts to gather confidential details." "They have evidence, Nolan. Emails, phone records." Nolan's blood ran cold as realization dawned. "I'm being set up." "By who?" "By him." Nolan slammed his fist on the bar, drawing stares from nearby patrons. "He's still playing us, Preston, creating situations where we look guilty." After hanging up, Nolan stumbled to his car, only to find a parking boot attached to the wheel and a notice of repossession on the windshield. His wealthy playboy life was unraveling thread by thread, each strand cut by an invisible hand. The following day, Preston received a similar blow. The small consulting firm that had tentatively offered him a position rescinded the offer, citing concerns about ongoing legal issues. When pressed, the HR director reluctantly mentioned that they'd received an anonymous package containing documents from Harrington Innovations' collapse, suggesting Preston's direct involvement in mismanagement. Marianne, meanwhile, faced social exile. Her former friends, wives of Douglas's business associates and board members, declined lunch invitations, and charity committee positions suddenly became filled. The divorce proceedings advanced with mechanical efficiency, each filing systematically dismantling the life she had built. Desperate for income, she approached her former interior design clients, only to discover that Douglas had made donations to their preferred charities in amounts that made refusing him awkward and accepting her services impossible. "He's everywhere," she confided to Preston during a rare family dinner at his apartment. "3 charities have returned my volunteer applications. The gallery where I used to serve on the board suddenly decided to restructure their leadership." "He's isolating us," Preston agreed, pushing food around his plate. "Professionally, financially, socially. Why not just be done with us?" Nolan demanded, agitated after a day spent with lawyers trying to unfreeze his accounts. "He's won. Why keep punishing us?" Preston studied his brother and mother thoughtfully. "Because punishment isn't the goal. He's teaching a lesson." "What lesson?" Marianne asked bitterly. "That he's more powerful than we realized." "That actions have consequences," Preston corrected. "That foundations matter. That what we destroyed can't be easily rebuilt." Later that week, Nolan reached his breaking point. After another rejected job application and increasing legal pressure, he drove to Douglas's new corporate headquarters, demanding to see his father. Security refused him entry, further enraging him. "Tell Douglas Harrington his son is here." Nolan shouted in the lobby, creating a scene as employees watched uncomfortably. "Tell him to face me himself instead of hiding behind lawyers and bank freezes." Security finally escorted him out, but not before he spotted his father watching from an upper-floor window, expression impassive as he observed his son's public meltdown. That evening, Nolan showed up drunk at Preston's apartment. He was watching Preston, standing there like some emperor while I was thrown out like garbage. "You need to pull yourself together," Preston advised, helping his brother to the couch. "This is what he wants, to push us until we self-destruct." "What's your solution then? Roll over? Accept defeat?" "No," Preston said thoughtfully. "I think it's time we acknowledge what we did and take responsibility for it." "Apologize?" Nolan scoffed. "After what he's done to us. After what we did to him," Preston corrected. "We took his company, Nolan. His life's work. We plotted behind his back with his wife and trusted colleague. If someone did that to you, what would you do in return?" The question hung in the air, unanswered but understood. That night, as Nolan slept off his intoxication on the couch, Preston made a decision. He retrieved his father's business card and dialed a number. "This is Douglas Harrington," the familiar voice answered. "It's Preston. We need to talk." A long pause followed. "The lake house. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Come alone." The next morning, Preston arrived at the secluded property to find his father splitting wood on the dock, a weekend ritual from his childhood that Douglas had maintained even at the height of his corporate success. Still using the old axe, Preston observed, approaching cautiously. Douglas set down the tool, studying his younger son without warmth or hostility, simply assessing. "It's reliable. Gets the job done. Like you," Preston acknowledged. "Underestimated you." "We all did." "A common mistake," Douglas replied, gesturing for Preston to sit on a nearby bench. "I assume you're here because your situation has become untenable." "I'm here because I owe you an apology," Preston said, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. "What we did was wrong. Not just strategically miscalculated, but fundamentally wrong." Douglas's expression remained unchanged. "And your brother and mother? Do they share this epiphany?" Nolan is still too angry to see clearly. "Mom is..." Preston hesitated. "She's suffering." "As intended," Douglas confirmed without remorse. "Actions have consequences, Preston. Yours destroyed something that took me a lifetime to build." "I know," Preston admitted, "and I can't undo that. But I'm asking, not for forgiveness, but for an end to the active campaign against us. You've won. We're defeated. Continuing to systematically dismantle our lives serves no purpose." Douglas considered this, his gaze turning toward the lake. "What do you think the purpose has been, Preston?" The question caught him off guard. "Revenge? Punishment?" "No." Douglas shook his head slightly. "Education." As father and son sat in the morning light, a flock of geese passed overhead, their reflection rippling across the still water. Neither spoke for several minutes, the weight of destroyed trust and blood bonds hanging between them. "I have a proposition for you," Douglas finally said. "Just for you." Chapter 9. Empire of Ashes. 1 year to the day after the coup at Harrington Innovations, Douglas Harrington stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel, accepting the Innovator of the Year award for Harrington Medical Solutions' revolutionary cardiac monitoring system. "Thank you," he addressed the assembled industry leaders and press. "This recognition belongs to the dedicated team who believed in our vision and brought it to life." From his seat at the head table, Preston Harrington watched his father command the room, not as the bitter victor in a family war, but as the visionary leader he had always been. The past year working under his father's mentorship at the new company had been challenging and humbling, but educational beyond measure. Douglas had accepted Preston's apology at the lake house that day, but made it clear that forgiveness and trust were separate matters. The job offer he extended came with strict conditions. Preston would start at the bottom, with no special treatment, no path to leadership unless earned through demonstrated loyalty and competence. "Success isn't inherited," Douglas had told him. "It's built, brick by brick, relationship by relationship. You want shortcuts? I'm offering you the long road instead." Preston had accepted, grateful for the opportunity when no other company would touch him. The work was demanding, the scrutiny constant, but for the first time he truly understood what his father had built and how. As Douglas concluded his speech to enthusiastic applause, Preston noticed a familiar figure slipping into the ballroom through a side entrance. Nolan, significantly thinner than a year ago, his once impeccable appearance now merely presentable. The brothers hadn't spoken in months, not since their final argument when Nolan discovered Preston had accepted a position with their father's new company. "Traitor," Nolan had shouted. "After everything he's done to destroy us, you're crawling back to him?" "He didn't destroy us, Nolan. We destroyed ourselves," Preston had replied. "I'm trying to rebuild something from the ashes." Now, as the formal program concluded and guests mingled, Nolan approached their table, determination evident in his stance despite his obvious discomfort in the setting. "Congratulations on the award," he said stiffly to Douglas, ignoring Preston entirely. Douglas regarded his elder son with clinical detachment. "Thank you. I'm surprised to see you here. I need to talk to you," Nolan continued, his voice low and urgent. "About Mom." Douglas's expression didn't change, but Preston detected a slight tension in his shoulders at the mention of his soon-to-be ex-wife. "What about her?" Douglas asked, his tone betraying nothing. "She's in the hospital," Nolan explained. "Exhaustion, they're saying, but it's more than that. She's given up. The divorce, the social isolation, the financial pressure, it's crushing her." For a moment, something flickered across Douglas's face, concern, perhaps, or memory, before his features settled back into impassivity. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said finally. "But her condition is no longer my concern." "She made a mistake," Nolan pressed. "We all did. But 36 years is exactly why her betrayal cut deepest," Douglas interrupted, his voice suddenly hard. "This conversation is finished." As Nolan opened his mouth to protest, security approached, summoned by a subtle gesture from Douglas, and escorted him from the ballroom, creating another scene that would further damage his already tattered reputation. Preston watched the interaction with conflicted emotions. He had spent the year working to understand his father's perspective, even coming to acknowledge the justice in his response to their betrayal. But the calculated coldness toward his mother and brother still disturbed him. Later that evening, as the celebration continued at a private reception in Douglas's penthouse overlooking the city, Preston found his father alone on the balcony, contemplating the skyline where Harrington Innovations had once dominated. "You could ease up on them," Preston suggested carefully. "Mom and Nolan, you've made your point." Douglas didn't look at him. "Have I? Your brother still believes he was entitled to take what he wanted simply because he wanted it. Your mother still believes 36 years of marriage should outweigh her betrayal. And what do you believe?" Preston asked. "That punishment should be eternal?" Douglas turned to face his son then, his expression softening slightly, the closest he came to warmth these days. "The consequences of their actions aren't punishment, Preston. They're reality. Reality can change," Preston suggested. "You gave me a second chance." "I gave you an opportunity to earn a second chance," Douglas corrected. "You've spent a year doing exactly that, starting at the bottom, working harder than anyone else, rebuilding trust brick by brick. Have they done the same?" Before Preston could answer, Douglas's assistant approached with an urgent message. They were needed in the conference room where several key investors had gathered. The conversation about family was set aside as business took precedence, a pattern Preston had come to recognize as his father's way of compartmentalizing the personal pain he refused to acknowledge. 2 days later, Preston visited his mother in the hospital. Marion Harrington had indeed lost weight, her once vibrant presence diminished by stress and isolation. The divorce had been finalized the previous month, leaving her with the settlement outlined in their decades-old prenuptial agreement. Comfortable, but far from the luxury she had grown accustomed to. "Have you seen him?" she asked immediately, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "Every day," Preston confirmed. "I work for him, remember? Does he ever mention me?" Preston hesitated, unwilling to wound her further with the truth, but equally unwilling to offer false hope. "No, Mom, he doesn't." Tears welled in her eyes. "I made a terrible mistake, Preston. Not just the affair, but forgetting who your father truly is, what he's capable of when betrayed. You couldn't have predicted this," Preston offered, though he no longer believed it himself. The signs of his father's strategic brilliance and unforgiving nature had always been there, visible to anyone willing to see them. I could have, she disagreed. I should have. 36 years. I watched him outmaneuver competitors, dismantle threats, build empires from nothing. I just never thought he'd apply those same skills against his family. Preston took her hand, understanding now the full scope of their miscalculation. They had seen Douglas as the patriarch, the successful businessman, the husband and father, roles they believed gave them leverage over him. They had failed to see him in his most fundamental form, a strategist who never forgot a loyalty or forgave a betrayal. The following week, as Harrington Medical Solutions announced its expansion into European markets, another milestone eclipsing the legacy of its predecessor company, Nolan made one final desperate attempt to reconcile. He arrived at Douglas's office unannounced, having bribed a security guard with his last valuable possession, a Rolex watch gifted by his father upon his college graduation. 2 minutes, he pleaded with Douglas's surprised assistant. That's all I'm asking. Douglas emerged from his office, expression cold but controlled. You've gone to extraordinary lengths for this meeting. I need help, Nolan admitted, the words clearly painful for him. The legal fees, the frozen accounts, I'm drowning. And you're my father. Nolan exploded, frustration overwhelming his planned approach. Despite everything, despite what we did, despite what you've done in return. Douglas studied him for a long moment before responding. Blood isn't enough, Nolan. It never was. Trust, loyalty, respect. These are the foundations of any relationship worth having. You destroyed all three. So that's it, Nolan asked, desperation giving way to resignation. You'll help Preston, but not me? You'll forgive him, but not your wife of 36 years. Preston earned his place, Douglas explained with clinical detachment. He started at the bottom, worked 16-hour days, rebuilt trust through consistent action rather than desperate words. He acknowledged not just that he was wrong, but why he was wrong. And Mom, Douglas's expression hardened. Your mother made her choice. She chose Blackstone. She chose to betray decades of partnership. She chose to laugh when you declare my time was over. Choices have consequences. Blackstone abandoned her the moment things went south, Nolan argued. Isn't that punishment enough? That wasn't punishment, Douglas corrected. That was inevitable. Richard Blackstone has abandoned every relationship when it no longer served his ambition. I warned your mother of this 15 years ago when I hired him despite his reputation. She chose not to listen then, just as she chose not to value loyalty later. As security arrived to escort Nolan out, Douglas added one final observation. The company collapsed in a week because it was built on borrowed loyalty. Remember that if you ever build anything of your own. 6 months later, Harrington Medical Solutions celebrated its second anniversary as the industry leader in precision medical equipment. The company that had risen from the ashes of betrayal now employed over 500 people, including Preston Harrington, who had worked his way up to a respectable middle management position. At the anniversary gala, Douglas took the stage to announce a new research initiative dedicated to advancing cardiac care for pediatric patients. As applause filled the grand ballroom, he caught sight of his former wife entering quietly through a side door. Mary Ann had recovered her health and some of her former elegance, though her designer gown was from a previous season rather than custom-made, as had once been her preference. She stood at the back of the room, watching the man she had betrayed command the audience with the same charisma that had first attracted her decades ago. Douglas acknowledged her presence with the slightest nod. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, merely recognition of a shared history, now concluded. She returned the gesture before slipping out as quietly as she had entered. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Preston found his father on the rooftop terrace, gazing at the city lights below. Mom was here, Preston observed, joining him at the railing. I saw her, Douglas confirmed. Nolan wasn't. No, he wasn't. Preston hesitated before asking the question that had haunted him for months. Will you ever forgive them? Douglas considered this, his expression thoughtful rather than hard for once. Forgiveness requires repentance, Preston, your brother still believes he was entitled to what he tried to take. Your mother still believes her betrayal should be excused because of shared history. And me? Preston asked quietly. Have you forgiven me? Douglas turned to his son, studying him with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, including his own. You're here, aren't you? Working, learning, rebuilding. Actions matter more than words, Preston. They always have. As they stood together, overlooking the city, the lights of their new empire gleaming against the night sky, Douglas Harrington completed his lesson. He had lost a family, but preserved his legacy. He had transformed betrayal into opportunity, turning the ashes of what was taken into the foundation of something stronger. His sons had declared, "This company is ours now, old man." His wife had laughed, saying, "Your time is over." They hadn't realized the company's biggest client was loyal to him personally. One phone call, and their $100 million contract had vanished. The company had collapsed in a week. They had come begging. But Douglas Harrington never begged. And he never forgave betrayal, not even from those who shared his name and blood. The empire he rebuilt from ashes served as both his vindication and his vengeance, a monument to the cost of underestimating a man who had spent a lifetime turning setbacks into victories. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Lies. Tyler Brennan had built his life on 3 pillars: his construction empire, his family, and his unwavering belief that loyalty was everything. At 42, he commanded respect in the industry with his reputation for delivering impossible projects on time and under budget. His calloused hands told the story of a man who'd climbed from operating bulldozers to owning the largest construction firm in the state. Amanda Brennan, 36, had been Tyler's college sweetheart. Back then, she was studying art therapy while he pursued engineering. She'd supported him through the lean years when he was building his business from nothing, working double shifts while pregnant with their daughter Emma. Now, 12 years into marriage, she ran a successful art gallery downtown, a dream Tyler had funded once his company took off. Their daughter Emma, 10 years old, was Tyler's everything. She had her father's determined spirit and her mother's artistic eye. Emma spent most afternoons at Tyler's construction sites, wearing a tiny hard hat and asking endless questions about the machinery. She was the bridge between her parents' different worlds. The Brennan household in the affluent Oakwood neighborhood seemed perfect from the outside. Tyler had personally designed and built their home, ensuring every detail reflected their journey together. The family photos lining the hallways showed years of happiness: camping trips, Emma's soccer games, anniversary dinners. But perfection, Tyler would soon learn, was often just an expertly crafted facade. Amanda had grown restless over the past year. The gallery had introduced her to a different crowd: artists, collectors, people who spoke of passion and spontaneity in ways that made her question her structured life. She began staying late for exhibitions and taking weekend trips for art acquisitions. Tyler, consumed with a massive downtown renovation project, trusted his wife completely. Emma noticed the changes first. Children always do. She saw the way her mother would smile at her phone when she thought no one was looking. She noticed the new perfume, the designer clothes that seemed inappropriate for art gallery work. Most importantly, she saw the way her mother's eyes had grown distant when she looked at Tyler. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in October. Tyler was reviewing blueprints in his home office when Emma knocked on the door. "Daddy, can we talk?" Tyler looked up to see his daughter's troubled expression. She rarely looked this serious unless something was deeply wrong. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Emma fidgeted with her hands, a habit she'd inherited from her mother. "I think Mommy has a secret." Tyler set down his pen, giving Emma his full attention. What kind of secret? The kind that makes her lie about where she goes. The words hit Tyler like a physical blow, but he kept his expression neutral. Emma was intuitive beyond her years, and Tyler had learned to take her observations seriously. Tell me more. Emma explained what she'd noticed. The hushed phone calls, the unexplained absences, the way Amanda would quickly close her laptop when Emma entered the room. It was the behavior of someone living a double life. Tyler thanked Emma for trusting him with her concerns and sent her to bed, but sleep eluded him that night. He lay beside Amanda, studying her peaceful face in the moonlight, wondering if the woman he'd loved for 15 years was capable of such deception. The next morning, Tyler made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting Amanda directly, he chose to investigate. If his wife was having an affair, he would know everything before making his move. Tyler Brennan had built an empire by being thorough and strategic. He would approach this potential betrayal the same way. Little did he know that his 10-year-old daughter would soon become the key to unlocking a truth that would shatter their family forever. Chapter 2. The Disappearance. The call came at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Tyler was inspecting a foundation pour when his phone rang with Amanda's ringtone. "Tyler, Emma never came home from school." Amanda's voice was tight with panic. Her teacher said she left with the other kids at dismissal, but she's not here. Tyler's blood went cold. Emma always walked the 4 blocks home with her best friend Chloe, a routine they'd followed for 2 years without incident. "I'll be right there," Tyler said, already running toward his truck. The next 6 hours blurred together in a nightmare of phone calls and search parties. Tyler organized his construction crews to canvass the neighborhood, while Amanda contacted every parent and teacher they knew. The police arrived by evening, asking questions that felt like accusations. "Has Emma been upset about anything lately?" Officer Martinez asked. "Any changes at home?" Tyler and Amanda exchanged glances. Neither mentioned Emma's recent observations about her mother's behavior. The first night was the worst. Tyler barely slept, alternating between driving the neighborhood and manning the phones. Amanda sobbed intermittently, clutching one of Emma's favorite stuffed animals. Neighbors brought food and offered support, but nothing could fill the growing void of Emma's absence. By the third day, the police had expanded their search radius. Tyler hired private investigators and offered a $50,000 reward for information. His business partners took over his projects, understanding that nothing mattered more than finding his daughter. Amanda's behavior during the search struck Tyler as odd. While he was consumed with organizing search efforts, she seemed almost attached at times, spending long periods alone in Emma's room or taking unexplained walks around the neighborhood. When Tyler suggested they check Amanda's gallery for any clues, she quickly dismissed the idea. The media attention intensified by day 5. Tyler faced cameras with red-rimmed eyes, pleading for Emma's safe return. Amanda stood beside him, but Tyler noticed she avoided looking directly into the cameras. It was a small detail, but Tyler's investigative instincts were now finely tuned. Meanwhile, Tyler's private investigators were uncovering information about Amanda's recent activities. Credit card records showed purchases at expensive restaurants she'd never mentioned. Hotel charges on days she claimed to be at gallery events. Phone records revealed extensive communication with a number registered to someone named Rick Valdez. Tyler recognized the name from Amanda's gallery events, but had never met the man. According to the investigators, Valdez was a sculptor who'd been featured in several of Amanda's recent exhibitions. He was 34, divorced, and had a reputation as a charming manipulator who targeted wealthy, married women. On day 6, Tyler made a connection that chilled him to the bone. The investigators revealed that Valdez owned a cabin in the mountains, about 2 hours from town. The same area where the police had reported unconfirmed sightings of a young girl matching Emma's description. Tyler's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Had Emma discovered something about her mother's affair? Had she confronted Amanda, or even threatened to tell Tyler? The thought that Amanda might have. Tyler couldn't complete the thought. As the 7th day dawned, Tyler stood in his empty kitchen, drinking coffee and staring at Emma's artwork covering the refrigerator. One drawing showed their family as stick figures, all holding hands and smiling. At the bottom, Emma had written, "The best family ever," in purple crayon. Tyler's hands trembled as he held the drawing. Whatever had happened to Emma, whoever was responsible, they would pay. Tyler Brennan didn't forgive betrayal, and he never forgot a debt owed. The sound of his doorbell ringing at 10:47 p.m. that night would mark the beginning of the end for everyone who had wronged him. Chapter 3. The Truth Revealed. Tyler rushed to the front door, his heart pounding with hope and dread. Through the peephole, he saw a small figure hunched on his porch. He threw open the door to find Emma, but she looked nothing like the confident girl who had disappeared a week ago. Emma's clothes were dirty and torn. Her hair was matted, and dark circles ringed her eyes. But it was her expression that stopped Tyler cold. She looked older, as if she'd aged years in just 7 days. "Emma." Tyler dropped to his knees, pulling his daughter into his arms. She felt smaller, more fragile than he remembered. "Daddy," Emma whispered, clinging to him. "Please, don't call Mom and Grandpa, just help me." Tyler's blood chilled at her words. "Why, sweetheart? What happened? Where have you been?" Emma pulled back slightly, her young eyes filled with a pain no child should carry. "I saw them, Daddy. I saw Mommy with the bad man." "What bad man?" "Emma, you're safe now. Just tell me what happened." Emma's voice was barely audible. "The man from the gallery. Rick. I follow Mommy after school on Tuesday because I wanted to prove she was lying to you. She went to his apartment instead of work." Tyler's heart hammered against his ribs. "Go on, baby." "I hid outside and saw them through the window. They were kissing and touching each other. Then they saw me." Emma's voice broke. "Rick got really angry. He said I was a little spy and that I could ruin everything. Mommy just cried and said she was sorry, but she didn't try to stop him." The words hit Tyler like physical blows. "What did he do, Emma?" "He grabbed me and put me in his car. He drove me to a cabin in the mountains. He said if I ever told anyone what I saw, he would hurt you and make sure Mommy went to jail for being a bad mother." Tyler's vision blurred with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm for Emma's sake. "How did you get away?" "He left this morning to get food. I broke a window and ran through the woods until I found a road. A nice truck driver brought me home, but I made him drop me off at the corner because I was scared Rick might be watching the house." Tyler gathered Emma closer, his mind racing. His 10-year-old daughter had been kidnapped and held for a week because she'd discovered her mother's affair. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. "Emma, listen to me very carefully. You're safe now, and you did nothing wrong. But we need to call the police so they can arrest Rick." Emma shook her head frantically. "No, Daddy. He said he has pictures of Mommy doing bad things. And if the police come, he'll show everyone and Mommy will go to jail and we'll lose our house and you'll hate us both." Tyler's jaw clenched. Valdez had manipulated and terrorized a child to protect his affair with Amanda. The man had crossed every line that mattered to Tyler. "Where's Mommy now?" Tyler asked. "She's at Rick's apartment. She doesn't know I escaped yet." Tyler pulled out his phone with trembling hands. "I need to call the police, Emma. Rick kidnapped you. That's a serious crime." As Tyler dialed 911, his mind was already working through the implications. Amanda's behavior during the search now made perfect sense. She'd known where Emma was, but couldn't reveal it without exposing her affair. She'd watched Tyler suffer for a week, knowing their daughter was being held captive by her lover. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, Tyler told them everything Emma had revealed. Officer Martinez took detailed notes while Emma gave her statement, her small voice growing stronger as she realized she was truly safe. "We'll arrest Valdez immediately," Martinez assured Tyler, "and we'll need to speak with your wife about her knowledge of the situation." Tyler nodded grimly. "She's at Valdez's apartment. The address is in my wife's phone records, which your department should already have." As the police car pulled away to make the arrests, Tyler knelt beside Emma again. "You were so brave, sweetheart. I'm proud of you for telling the truth." Emma looked up at him with eyes too old for her face. "Are you going to divorce Mommy?" The question pierced Tyler's heart. "I don't know yet, baby. But whatever happens between your mother and me, you'll always be safe and loved." Emma nodded solemnly. "I love you, Daddy. I'm sorry Mommy did bad things. That's not your fault, Tyler said firmly. None of this is your fault. But as Tyler tucked Emma into her own bed for the first time in a week, his thoughts turned dark. Amanda and Valdez had traumatized his daughter and stolen a week of his life. They would both pay for what they'd done, and Tyler would make sure the payment was far more than they could afford. Tyler Brennan had spent his entire life building things. Now, he would dedicate himself to tearing down the lives of those who had betrayed him. Chapter 4: Uncovering the Web. The arrests made the morning news. Rick Valdez was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and child endangerment. Amanda was released after questioning, her involvement deemed complicated by the district attorney. She returned home that evening, her face streaked with tears and shame. Tyler barely looked at her when she walked through the door. He was sitting at the kitchen table, Emma beside him working on homework, a deliberate tableau of normalcy that excluded Amanda entirely. "Tyler, we need to talk," Amanda said, her voice hoarse. "Not in front of Emma," Tyler replied without looking up. "Go to your sister's. We'll talk tomorrow." Amanda started to protest, but something in Tyler's tone stopped her. She grabbed a suitcase and left without another word. After Emma went to bed, Tyler called his lawyer, Dennis Morrison, a sharp-eyed attorney who'd handled Tyler's business contract for years. "I need a divorce attorney," Tyler said without preamble. "The best one you know." "What happened, Tyler?" Tyler gave Dennis the short version. When he finished, Dennis whistled low. "You need Rebecca Hamilton. She's ruthless and expensive, but she'll protect your interests. I'll set up a meeting for tomorrow." Tyler's next call was to his private investigator, Frank Rodriguez. "I want everything on both of them. Financial records, phone logs, emails, social media, employment history, everything. And I want to know exactly how long this affair has been going on." Over the next 3 days, while Amanda stayed at her sister's house, Tyler began to understand the full scope of the betrayal. Frank's investigation revealed that Amanda and Valdez had been involved for 8 months. Credit card records showed expensive dinners, hotel rooms, and jewelry purchases Tyler had never seen Amanda wear. But the most damaging discovery came from Amanda's laptop, which Tyler legally seized since it was registered to his business for tax purposes. Hidden in encrypted folders were hundreds of photos and videos Amanda had taken of their home, Tyler's private office, and even their bedroom. She'd been documenting their wealth and lifestyle for Valdez. Frank also uncovered Valdez's pattern. The sculptor specifically targeted wealthy married women, documented their assets through secret recordings and photos, then used the evidence for financial leverage. Amanda wasn't his first victim. She was his fifth. "Your wife was being played," Frank explained as they sat in Tyler's office. "But she was also an active participant. Some of these photos show her going through your filing cabinets, photographing financial documents." Tyler stared at the evidence spread across his desk. Amanda hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been gathering intelligence on his business empire. Whether she'd done it willingly or under Valdez's manipulation didn't matter. The betrayal was complete. Rebecca Hamilton, the divorce attorney, was a steel-eyed woman in her 50s who commanded respect from the moment she walked into Tyler's office. "I've reviewed the preliminary evidence," she said, opening her briefcase. "Your wife's actions go beyond infidelity. She violated your privacy, potentially compromised your business, and failed to report a kidnapping involving your child. We can destroy her in court." "I want full custody of Emma," Tyler said. "Amanda can have supervised visitation at most. Given the circumstances, that's achievable. The question is how aggressive you want to be regarding assets." Tyler's expression hardened. "I want everything. The house, the business, the investments. She can keep her clothes and her car." "What about the gallery?" Tyler had been thinking about this. Amanda's gallery was technically her business, but Tyler had provided the initial investment and served as guarantor on the lease. "I'm calling in the loan and withdrawing my guarantee. Let her figure out how to run it without my backing." Rebecca made notes. "We'll also need to address the criminal implications. If Amanda knew Valdez had kidnapped Emma and failed to report it, she could face charges herself." Tyler had already considered this angle. "I want her to sweat about that possibility, but I won't push for charges if she cooperates with the divorce." As Rebecca packed up her papers, She gave Tyler an appraising look. Most men in your situation want revenge, but you seem unusually methodical about this. Tyler's smile was cold. I learned a long time ago that the best revenge isn't quick, it's thorough. That evening, Tyler sat in Emma's room as she prepared for bed. She'd been quiet since her return, processing everything that had happened. "Daddy, are you angry at me for spying on Mommy?" Tyler turned from where he'd been adjusting her bookshelf. "No, sweetheart. You were trying to protect our family. That was brave. Will Mommy come home? Not to live with us, no. But she'll always be your mother, and you'll still see her." Emma nodded slowly. "Will the bad man go to jail?" "Yes, for a very long time." "Good," Emma said with a firmness that reminded Tyler of himself. "People who hurt kids should go to jail." As Tyler tucked Emma in, he reflected on how much his daughter had grown up in just 2 weeks. She'd seen the worst of adult behavior, but had emerged with her moral compass intact. Tyler would make sure she never had to experience such betrayal again. Meanwhile, the wheels of Tyler's revenge were just beginning to turn. Chapter 5: The Setup. 2 weeks after Amanda's arrest, Tyler's plan began to take shape. He'd moved beyond anger into the cold, calculating mindset that had built his business empire. Every move was strategic, designed to achieve maximum impact. Tyler's first target was Valdez's upcoming trial. While the prosecutor was confident of conviction, Tyler wanted to ensure the sentence reflected the full scope of the crime. He hired a victim's advocate to work with Emma, not just for her emotional recovery, but to prepare the most compelling testimony possible. Frank Rodriguez had uncovered a crucial detail. Valdez had been using Amanda's gallery to launder money from his previous schemes. 3 other married women had given him loans for artwork that never existed. The FBI was now investigating Valdez for wire fraud and racketeering in addition to the kidnapping charges. Tyler arranged a meeting with FBI agent Sarah Wells, who was leading the financial crimes investigation. "Mr. Brennan, we appreciate your cooperation," Agent Wells said as they sat in Tyler's office. "Your wife's documentation of your assets helped us understand Valdez's pattern, but we need her testimony to build the strongest case." Tyler had anticipated this moment. "Agent Wells, my wife is clearly a victim of Valdez's manipulation, but she also made choices that endanger my daughter. I want assurance that her cooperation will be noted in any potential charges against her. If she provides substantial assistance, we can recommend leniency." Tyler nodded. This was exactly what he'd hoped for. Amanda would have to choose between protecting herself and protecting what remained of her reputation. Meanwhile, Tyler was methodically dismantling Amanda's life. He'd called in the loan that funded her gallery, giving her 30 days to repay $200,000 she didn't have. He'd also withdrawn his personal guarantee on the gallery's lease, meaning Amanda was now personally liable for the remaining 18 months of rent. The art world was small and gossipy. Word of Amanda's affair and the kidnapping scandal spread quickly through her professional circles. 3 major artists pulled their work from her gallery, and 2 corporate clients canceled upcoming events. Tyler's business connections proved invaluable. He owned the buildings housing 2 of the city's most prominent galleries. A quiet word from Tyler, and both owners expressed concerns about Amanda's reputation issues potentially affecting their businesses. Amanda called Tyler repeatedly, begging for a meeting. Tyler finally agreed to see her at his office, neutral territory where she couldn't claim emotional manipulation. Amanda looked haggard when she arrived. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, and she'd lost weight during the stress of the past month. "Tyler, please," she began before even sitting down. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need you to understand." Tyler held up a hand. "I understand perfectly. You had an affair, endangered our daughter, and violated our marriage in every possible way. The only question now is how cooperative you're going to be." "What do you mean?" Tyler slid a folder across his desk. "FBI Agent Wells wants your testimony against Valdez. You're going to give it. You're also going to sign these divorce papers without contest." Amanda opened the folder and paled as she read. "Tyler, you're taking everything. The house, the investments, even my gallery funding. I'll have nothing. You should have thought of that before you let your lover kidnap our daughter. Emma wasn't supposed to be there. Rick panicked when he saw her. I never wanted her involved. Tyler's voice turned deadly quiet. But she was involved. For 7 days, my 10-year-old daughter was held captive by a man who threatened her family. For 7 days, I didn't know if she was alive or dead. And you knew where she was the entire time. Amanda's tears came freely now. I was scared. Rick said if I told anyone, he'd release photos that would destroy both of us. I thought he'd let her go after a few days. Instead, you watched me organize search parties and offer rewards while our daughter was being terrorized by your boyfriend. Tyler's control was impressive given the rage burning inside him. You made your choice, Amanda. Now you live with the consequences. What about Emma? She needs her mother. Emma will have supervised visitation twice a week. You'll pay child support based on your earning capacity, which should be interesting since you won't have a gallery much longer. Amanda's voice turned desperate. Tyler, I know I made terrible mistakes, but I loved you. I loved our family. Rick manipulated me, made me think. Stop. Tyler's word cut through her pleading. Don't insult my intelligence with victim stories. You documented our private life for 8 months. You photographed financial records, security codes, private conversations. That wasn't manipulation. That was collaboration. Tyler stood, indicating the meeting was over. You have 24 hours to decide. Cooperate with the FBI and sign the divorce papers, or face the consequences of not cooperating. What consequences? Tyler's smile was cold. You really want to find out what happens when you refuse to help prosecute the man who kidnapped your daughter? Amanda left his office in tears, but Tyler felt no sympathy. She'd burned their family to the ground for a relationship with a con artist. The fact that she'd been manipulated didn't excuse the choices she'd made. That evening, Tyler sat with Emma as she worked on a school project about family history. She was writing about Tyler's construction company and how he'd built it from nothing. Daddy, my teacher says some families break apart, but the important people stay together, Emma said without looking up from her writing. Are we going to stay together? Tyler put his arm around his daughter. We absolutely are. It's just going to be you and me now, kiddo. Emma smiled for the first time in weeks. Good. I like it better this way. Tyler realized that his daughter had reached the same conclusion he had. Some betrayals were too deep to forgive, even within a family. Emma understood that her mother had chosen another man over her family's safety. At 10 years old, she was already developing the moral clarity that would protect her from future manipulation. Tyler's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Hamilton. Amanda's attorney called. She's signing everything tomorrow morning. Tyler deleted the message and focused on Emma's project. Phase 1 of his plan was complete. Amanda was neutralized. Valdez would spend decades in prison, and Emma was safe. But Tyler wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Chapter 6, Expanding the Net. Amanda signed the papers on a rainy Thursday morning. She sat across from Tyler and their attorneys, her hands shaking as she put her signature to documents that transferred most of her life to her former husband. The FBI interview is scheduled for Monday. Rebecca Hamilton informed Amanda's attorney. Your client's cooperation will be noted in our final settlement. As Amanda left the law office, Tyler felt a cold satisfaction. She'd lost her marriage, her home, her business, and her daughter's respect. But Tyler's revenge was far from complete. Frank Rodriguez had uncovered something interesting. Valdez's art studio was rented from a property management company owned by Amanda's brother, Kevin Mitchell. Kevin had known about the affair for months and had actually helped Valdez set up the kidnapping by providing a key to the studio where Amanda stored some of her gallery's inventory. Tyler's investigation revealed that Kevin had his own motivations. He'd been skimming money from the property management company's accounts and needed Valdez's scheme to succeed so he could cover the missing funds with a cut of whatever Valdez extorted from Tyler. Family corruption runs deep, Frank observed as he presented Tyler with the evidence. Kevin's been stealing from his own company for 2 years. He's desperate enough to do anything. Tyler studied the financial records spread across his desk. Kevin Mitchell owned 4 rental properties in the Arts District, including the building that housed Amanda's gallery. He also managed properties for 3 other owners, giving him access to significant cash flow. "What's Kevin's exposure if this comes out?" Tyler asked. "Embezzlement charges, definitely. Probably fraud and conspiracy related to the kidnapping. He's looking at serious prison time." Tyler made a decision that would destroy Amanda's extended family. "I want to buy Kevin's properties. All of them." Frank raised an eyebrow. "He's not going to want to sell." Tyler's smile was predatory. "He won't have a choice." Tyler's next move was brilliantly simple. He had Frank deliver an anonymous tip to the IRS about Kevin's property management company. Within a week, federal auditors were examining Kevin's books. The missing money was discovered immediately. Tyler then approached the owners whose properties Kevin managed. As a respected businessman, Tyler's concerns about Kevin's financial irregularities carried significant weight. All three owners terminated their contracts with Kevin within days. Without income from property management and facing federal investigation, Kevin was financially devastated. When Tyler's lawyer made an offer to purchase Kevin's properties at 60 cents on the dollar, Kevin was forced to accept. But Tyler wasn't finished with Kevin. Using his new ownership of the building that housed Amanda's gallery, Tyler evicted her for a breach of lease terms related to criminal activity. Amanda's art business, already struggling after losing Tyler's financial backing, was effectively finished. The ripple effects extended further. Amanda's sister, Lisa, had co-signed some of Kevin's business loans. When Kevin defaulted, Lisa's credit was destroyed. Her husband, a mid-level bank manager, faced professional consequences when his wife's financial problems came to light during his annual review. Tyler's systematic destruction of Amanda's family network was methodical and ruthless. Each member had either actively participated in the betrayal or enabled it through their silence. Emma watched some of these developments with the sharp awareness that Tyler was beginning to recognize as her defining characteristic. "Daddy, why is Uncle Kevin moving away?" she asked one evening as they worked on dinner together. "Uncle Kevin made some bad choices that hurt our family," Tyler explained. "Sometimes people have to face consequences for their actions." Emma nodded thoughtfully. Like mommy. Like mommy. "I don't miss him," Emma said matter-of-factly. "He never liked me anyway. He always acted like I was a bother." Tyler realized that Emma had noticed Kevin's dismissive attitude toward her long before the kidnapping. Children were remarkably good at identifying people who didn't value them. Meanwhile, Valdez's trial was proceeding exactly as Tyler had hoped. Amanda's testimony was devastating, detailing how Valdez had manipulated her into documenting Tyler's assets and how he'd shown no remorse for traumatizing Emma. The prosecution presented evidence of Valdez's pattern of targeting wealthy married women, using Amanda's case as the most extreme example. The kidnapping charge elevated Valdez's crimes from con artist to predator. Tyler attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row where Valdez could see him. He wanted the man to know that his victim's father was watching, waiting, ensuring justice was served. Emma testified via closed-circuit television, her composed recounting of her week in captivity moving several jurors to tears. Tyler was proud of his daughter's strength and clarity. She answered every question honestly, never dramatizing but never minimizing the fear she'd experienced. During cross-examination, Valdez's defense attorney tried to suggest that Emma had misunderstood what she'd seen at the apartment, that perhaps her mother and Valdez were just friends. Emma's response silenced the courtroom. "I know what kissing looks like. I know what people do when they take their clothes off together. And I know the difference between friends and people who are being bad together." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Valdez was convicted on all counts: kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, child endangerment, wire fraud, and racketeering. The judge sentenced him to 35 years in federal prison. Tyler felt a grim satisfaction as Valdez was led away in shackles. But even 35 years didn't feel like enough payment for what the man had put Emma through. As Tyler and Emma left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about the case. Tyler ignored them all except one. "Mr. Brennan, do you feel justice was served today?" Tyler stopped and looked directly into the camera. "My daughter is safe, and the man who hurt her will never hurt another child. That's what justice looks like." That evening, Tyler and Emma celebrated with ice cream and a movie. As they sat together on their couch, In their house, the one Amanda would never return to, Tyler reflected on how much they'd both grown through this ordeal. Emma was stronger, more self-reliant, and possessed a moral clarity that would serve her well in life. She'd learned that actions have consequences and that loyalty was earned, not assumed. Tyler had learned something different, that his capacity for methodical revenge was far greater than he'd ever imagined. And he wasn't finished using it yet. Chapter 7. The Final Players. 3 months after Valdez's conviction, Tyler discovered the last piece of the betrayal puzzle. Frank Rodriguez's continued investigation revealed that Amanda's affair hadn't happened in a vacuum. Someone had introduced her to Valdez, someone who knew about Tyler's wealth and business vulnerabilities. That someone was Dr. Patricia Hoffman, Amanda's therapist. Tyler's initial reaction was disbelief. Amanda had been seeing Dr. Hoffman for anxiety and depression related to their marriage. Tyler had even paid for the sessions, believing his wife was working to improve their relationship. Instead, Dr. Hoffman had been systematically undermining the marriage while feeding information about Tyler's business to Valdez. The therapist had a gambling addiction that left her vulnerable to Valdez's financial manipulation. She violated every ethical standard in her profession, Frank explained as they reviewed recorded phone calls between Dr. Hoffman and Valdez. She shared details about your marriage, your financial situation, even Amanda's psychological vulnerabilities. Tyler stared at the evidence with cold fury. Dr. Hoffman had weaponized her professional relationship with Amanda to destroy Tyler's family. She'd used her position of trust to facilitate the affair and, ultimately, Emma's kidnapping. What's her exposure? Tyler asked. Professional license revocation, certainly. Possible criminal charges for conspiracy and violation of patient confidentiality. Her malpractice insurance won't cover intentional criminal acts, so she's personally liable for any civil damages. Tyler made his decision immediately. I want her destroyed professionally and financially. Tyler's first move was strategic. Rather than filing complaints himself, he arranged for 3 of Dr. Hoffman's other patients to discover that their confidentiality had been violated. The state medical board investigation was swift and damning. Dr. Hoffman's professional license was suspended pending a full hearing. Her practice collapsed as patients fled and colleagues distanced themselves from the scandal. The medical community was small and unforgiving when it came to ethical violations. Tyler then filed a massive civil lawsuit against Dr. Hoffman for intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of fiduciary duty, and conspiracy. The damages sought included Tyler's legal fees, Emma's ongoing therapy costs, and punitive damages for the trauma inflicted on his family. But Tyler's most devastating move was personal. Frank's investigation revealed that Dr. Hoffman had a teenage daughter, Rachel, who was a promising art student. The girl had applied for early admission to prestigious art schools, using a portfolio that included several pieces displayed in Amanda's gallery. Tyler purchased those pieces through a proxy buyer, then had them authenticated. The authentication revealed that 2 of the paintings Rachel claimed as her own work were actually created by a lesser-known artist whose pieces Amanda had acquired for the gallery. The plagiarism scandal destroyed Rachel's art school prospects and led to her suspension from high school. Dr. Hoffman, already facing financial ruin from the lawsuit and loss of her practice, watched her daughter's future crumble as well. Tyler felt no sympathy. Dr. Hoffman had used her position to target his family, ultimately contributing to Emma's kidnapping. Her daughter was experiencing a fraction of the trauma Emma had endured. Emma, now 11 and increasingly perceptive, noticed the pattern of Tyler's actions. "Daddy, you're hurting everyone who hurt us, aren't you?" she asked one evening as they reviewed her homework. Tyler considered his response carefully. "I'm making sure people face consequences for their choices. When adults hurt children, especially our family, they need to understand that actions matter." Emma nodded slowly. "Good. People should protect kids, not hurt them." Tyler realized that Emma was developing the same unforgiving moral code that drove him. She understood that some betrayals were too deep to overlook, that forgiveness without consequences was just enabling further harm. Amanda, meanwhile, was struggling to rebuild her life. Without the gallery, without Tyler's financial support, and with limited visitation rights to Emma, she'd moved to a small apartment across town and taken a job at a chain art supply store. During one of her supervised visits with Emma, Amanda tried to explain her actions. "I made terrible mistakes," Amanda told their daughter. "I hope someday you can forgive me." Emma's response was devastating in its simplicity. "Daddy says forgiveness is for people who are sorry and try to make things better. You're just sorry you got caught." Tyler, watching from across the room, felt proud of Emma's clarity. His daughter understood the difference between genuine remorse and self-pity. Amanda's face crumpled, but Emma continued with the brutal honesty of childhood. "You let the bad man take me because you cared more about keeping your boyfriend than keeping me safe. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." After Amanda left that day, Tyler knelt beside Emma. "That was hard to say to your mother, but it was true, wasn't it?" "Yes, it was true." Emma leaned against Tyler's shoulder. "I don't want to see her anymore. She makes me feel sad and angry." Tyler made a mental note to discuss modifying the visitation schedule with Rebecca. Emma was old enough to have her preferences considered by the court, and she'd clearly made her decision about her relationship with her mother. As Tyler tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked a question that showed how much she'd grown through their ordeal. "Daddy, when I'm older, how will I know if someone really loves me or if they're just pretending?" Tyler thought carefully before answering. "Real love means putting the other person's safety and happiness before your own wants. People who really love you will protect you, even when it's hard or costs them something." Emma smiled. "Like how you protected me. Like how we protected each other," Tyler corrected. "You were brave enough to tell me the truth, even when it was scary." As Emma drifted off to sleep, Tyler reflected on the lessons they'd both learned. Trust had to be earned. Loyalty was precious because it was rare, and some betrayals were so fundamental that forgiveness became impossible. Tyler's war against those who had betrayed his family was nearly complete. But he had one final move to make, one that would ensure Emma's future security while sending a clear message about the price of crossing the Brennan family. Chapter 8: Total Victory. 1 year after Emma's kidnapping, Tyler stood in his office reviewing the final reports from Frank Rodriguez. Every person who had betrayed or endangered his family had been systematically destroyed. Valdez was serving his 35-year sentence in a federal penitentiary, where Tyler's connections had ensured he was housed with inmates who had strong feelings about people who hurt children. Amanda was working retail, living in a studio apartment, and had voluntarily terminated her parental rights after Emma refused to see her for 6 months. The court had agreed to Emma's wishes, and Amanda was now legally nothing more than a biological donor to Tyler's daughter. Kevin Mitchell had fled the state after his embezzlement conviction, leaving behind a destroyed credit rating and a reputation that would follow him anywhere in the construction or property management industry. Dr. Hoffman had lost her medical license permanently and was facing personal bankruptcy. Her daughter Rachel had been forced to repeat her senior year of high school and was working part-time to help pay the family's legal bills. But Tyler's most devastating victory was still to come. Frank's investigation had uncovered one final piece of the puzzle. The original introduction between Amanda and Valdez hadn't been accidental. It had been orchestrated by Amanda's college roommate, Monica Reeves, who worked as a coordinator for high-end art events. Monica had connected Amanda and Valdez deliberately, knowing about the sculptor's pattern of targeting wealthy married women. Monica received a finder's fee for each successful mark she delivered to Valdez's schemes. Tyler's discovery of Monica's role had taken months of investigation, tracing financial transfers and communication records. When he finally had the proof, Tyler's response was swift and total. Monica worked for an event planning company that frequently coordinated gallery openings and art auctions. Tyler owned the venues for 60% of the company's annual events. One conversation with the company's owner about Monica's reliability issues was enough to end her career in event planning. Tyler then used his influence with the city's Arts Council to ensure Monica was blacklisted from cultural events throughout the region. Her specialty was connecting artists with wealthy collectors, a role that became impossible when no venue would work with her. But Tyler's final move against Monica was personal. Frank's investigation revealed that Monica's teenage son had been accepted to a prestigious private school with a substantial scholarship. The scholarship was funded by a foundation that Tyler's company had donated to for years. Tyler made a single phone call. Monica's son lost his scholarship and was forced to transfer to public school. When Monica called Tyler directly to beg for reconsideration, Tyler's response was cold and final. "You delivered my wife to a predator who kidnapped my daughter. Your son's education is the least of what you'll lose if you ever cross my family again." Monica moved out of state within a month, taking her son to start over in a place where Tyler's influence couldn't reach. As Tyler reviewed the complete destruction of everyone who had wronged his family, he felt a satisfaction deeper than anything his business success had ever provided. These people had threatened the most important thing in his world, Emma's safety and well-being. Their punishment had been total and permanent. Emma, now 12, had grown into a confident, intelligent young woman who shared Tyler's uncompromising sense of justice. She excelled in school, played competitive soccer, and had developed an interest in business that pleased Tyler enormously. One evening, as they worked together on Emma's math homework, she looked up at Tyler with serious eyes. "Daddy, I know you did things to hurt the people who hurt us." Tyler set down his pen, giving Emma his full attention. "Yes, I did." "Good," Emma said simply. "They deserved it." Tyler studied his daughter's face, seeing the same moral clarity that had driven his own actions. "Why do you think they deserved it?" Emma's answer was thoughtful and precise. "Because they didn't just hurt us once. They made choices every day to keep hurting us. Mommy chose her boyfriend over my safety. The doctor lady chose money over helping people. Uncle Kevin chose stealing over being honest. They all had chances to do the right thing, but they didn't." Tyler nodded, proud of Emma's reasoning. "And what do you think happens when people don't face consequences for hurting others?" "They keep hurting people," Emma replied without hesitation. "Like bullies at school. If nobody stops them, they just get worse." Tyler realized that Emma had internalized the most important lesson of their ordeal, that evil succeeded when good people failed to respond with appropriate force. His daughter would never be a victim because she understood that some fights were worth winning at any cost. 6 months later, Tyler received news that brought their story full circle. Valdez had been killed in prison by an inmate whose own daughter had been kidnapped years earlier. Tyler felt no sadness at the news, only a sense that the universe had finally balanced its scales. Tyler told Emma about Valdez's death that evening over dinner. Her reaction was characteristically direct. "I'm glad he's dead," she said matter-of-factly. "Now he can never hurt another kid." Tyler agreed. Some people forfeited their right to exist in civilized society through their actions. Valdez had been one of them. As Tyler tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked a question that showed how completely she understood their journey. "Daddy, if someone ever tries to hurt our family again, will you stop them?" Tyler's answer was immediate and absolute. "Always. No matter what it costs, no matter how long it takes. I will always protect you." Emma smiled and closed her eyes, secure in the knowledge that her father was a man who kept his promises. Tyler sat in his home office later that evening, reviewing business reports and planning the next phase of his company's expansion. The house was quiet, peaceful, and completely his. Emma was safe, his business was thriving, and his enemies had been utterly defeated. Tyler Brennan had learned that he was capable of systematic, ruthless revenge when his family was threatened. More importantly, he learned that he felt no guilt about exercising that capability. Some men built businesses. Some men built fortunes. Tyler Brennan had built something more valuable, an unshakable fortress around the one person who mattered most to him. And he would defend that fortress against any threat, no matter where it came from or what it cost to eliminate it. Chapter 9. Legacy of Steel. 5 years had passed since Emma's kidnapping, and the Brennan family had emerged stronger than ever. Emma, now 17, was preparing for her senior year of high school with plans to study business and engineering at college. She had grown into a formidable young woman who combined Tyler's strategic thinking with a moral clarity that impressed everyone who met her. Tyler's business had expanded nationally, with construction projects in 12 states. His reputation for delivering complex projects on time and under budget had made him one of the most sought-after contractors in the country. More importantly, his reputation for protecting what was his had made him a man no one crossed lightly. The final chapter of Tyler's revenge had been written 3 years earlier when Amanda, struggling with alcoholism and depression, had attempted to reconnect with Emma through social media. Emma's response had been swift and final. She blocked her biological mother on all platforms and informed Tyler of the contact attempt. Tyler's response was equally decisive. Through his lawyers, he'd sent Amanda a cease and desist order that made clear any further attempt to contact Emma would result in harassment charges. Amanda had moved to another state and hadn't been heard from since. Emma's perspective on the situation was clear and unwavering. During a father-daughter conversation about college plans, she'd addressed the topic directly. "I know some people think I should forgive her," Emma said as they reviewed application materials. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to let someone back into my life who proved they can't be trusted." Tyler nodded approvingly. "What matters is that you're making decisions based on your own judgment, not other people's expectations." Emma's moral framework had been shaped by the crucible of betrayal and justice she'd experienced as a child. She understood that loyalty was earned through actions, not promised through words. She'd learned to evaluate people based on what they did when it mattered, not what they claimed they would do. At school, Emma was known for her leadership and her unwillingness to tolerate bullying or dishonesty. She'd inherited Tyler's protective instincts and applied them to defending classmates who couldn't defend themselves. Teachers respected her integrity, and her peers sought her guidance on difficult decisions. Tyler's proudest moment came during Emma's junior year when she discovered that a popular student was cheating on college admission tests. Despite pressure from classmates to stay silent, Emma had reported the cheating to school administrators. "Everyone says I'm being harsh," Emma had told Tyler that evening. "They say it could ruin his college chances." Tyler's response reinforced the lesson he'd been teaching since her kidnapping. His choices already ruined his college chances. You just made sure there were consequences. The cheating student was expelled and lost his scholarship opportunities. Emma faced social pressure for her decision, but she never wavered. She understood that integrity required difficult choices and that enabling dishonesty was itself a form of betrayal. Tyler's business philosophy had been similarly influenced by their shared experience. He was known for paying employees well and promoting based on merit, but he was equally known for his zero-tolerance approach to dishonesty or disloyalty. Employees who violated his trust were terminated immediately and blacklisted throughout the industry. This reputation had attracted the highest quality workers and contractors, people who valued the security of working for a man whose word was absolute. Tyler's projects were completed by teams that functioned with military precision because everyone understood the standards expected. Frank Rodriguez, now Tyler's head of security and investigations, had become a trusted family friend. His continued vigilance ensured that no threats to the Brennan family went undetected. The network of information and influence Tyler had built during his revenge campaign had evolved into a comprehensive security apparatus. "You've created something unique," Frank observed during one of their regular security briefings. "Most wealthy families worry about external threats. You've eliminated the possibility of internal betrayal." Tyler nodded. The lesson of Amanda's betrayal had been permanent. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford with anyone except Emma. His inner circle was small, carefully vetted, and continuously monitored. Loyalty was rewarded handsomely, but disloyalty was punished swiftly and completely. Emma's college applications reflected her intention to follow Tyler's path into business, but with her own focus on sustainable construction and environmental engineering. She wanted to build on Tyler's legacy while addressing the challenges of her generation. "I want to prove that being ethical and profitable aren't mutually exclusive," Emma explained as they discussed her career goals. "You taught me that reputation is everything in business. I want to build a reputation for solving problems that matter." Tyler was proud of Emma's vision, but he also ensured she understood the realities of the business world. During their weekend construction site visits, he taught her to read people as carefully as she read blueprints. Most people will try to use your success for their own benefit, Tyler explained as they watched crews pouring concrete for a new hospital. The key is identifying who deserves trust and who deserves distance. Emma had absorbed these lessons completely. She evaluated new acquaintances with the same systematic approach Tyler used for business deals. She was friendly but cautious, generous but not naive, trusting but never foolish. As Emma's 18th birthday approached, Tyler reflected on the journey they'd shared since that terrible night when she'd appeared on their doorstep as a 10-year-old refugee from her mother's betrayal. The trauma that could have destroyed them had instead forged them into an unbreakable team. Tyler's final act of revenge against those who had wronged them came on Emma's birthday itself. He presented her with a comprehensive trust fund that would ensure her financial independence for life, but the trust had specific conditions that reflected their shared values. The fund would only support Emma's endeavors if they met strict ethical standards. Any involvement with dishonest business practices, any betrayal of family loyalty, any action that compromised her integrity would result in immediate forfeiture of the trust. "I'm not worried about you violating these conditions," Tyler explained as Emma reviewed the documents. "But I want future generations to understand what the Brennan name represents." Emma smiled as she signed the papers. "Honor, loyalty, and consequences for those who violate both." Exactly. That evening, as they celebrated Emma's birthday with a small gathering of their closest friends and associates, Tyler watched his daughter interact with their guests. She was gracious but observant, engaging but careful, warm but never vulnerable. Emma had learned to protect herself without becoming cynical, to trust carefully without becoming paranoid, to forgive appropriately without becoming weak. She embodied the lessons Tyler had tried to teach through his actions during their darkest period. As the evening wound down and their guests departed, Tyler and Emma sat together on their back porch, looking out over the city Tyler's company had helped build. "Do you ever regret how we handled everything?" Emma asked, her question showing the maturity that impressed Tyler constantly. Tyler considered his answer carefully. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that you had to experience betrayal so young. But I don't regret our response to it." Emma nodded. "I used to wonder if we were too harsh. But then I think about all the kids who might have been hurt if we'd let them get away with it. Sometimes being kind to bad people means being cruel to innocent people." Tyler felt a deep satisfaction hearing Emma articulate the moral framework that had guided his own actions. She understood that mercy without justice was merely weakness, that forgiveness without consequences was enablement of further harm. "What will you do if someone betrays you in the future?" Tyler asked. Emma's answer was immediate and certain. "Exactly what you taught me. Investigate thoroughly, respond systematically, and never give them a second chance to hurt me or anyone I care about." Tyler smiled. His daughter had learned the most important lesson he could teach, that strength was not about avoiding conflict, but about ensuring that conflicts ended with justice served and threats eliminated. As they prepared for bed, Emma hugged Tyler with a fierce affection that had sustained them both through their trials. "Thank you for showing me that fighting back isn't wrong when you're protecting what matters," she said. "I'll never let anyone hurt our family the way they did." Tyler held his daughter close, knowing